GR86 Performance. What are we doing at the front bumper? The Aero nose cone. That's what we're doing. We're installing this bad boy right here. Came straight from Japan, from blackhawkjapan.com. No, I'm not sponsored. I buy these with my own money. There's your part number, MS322-18002. I have no idea why it's like that. Basically, you get two little spacer clips that go behind those. You get two screws. You get one thing of adhesion primer. And you get this book that I'm holding. Let's see what it shows you at first. I kind of looked through it really quick. It doesn't necessarily make sense simply because it's showing some parts that don't have on the US car. As you can see over here, this area has the little clips that the bolts go into, which I don't have, so I'm gonna have to improvise on that. It shows you the little gappage and how everything installs, and I'm assuming these are safety things and what you're gonna need. Nobody cares about any of that. But we have the actual nose cone. It's got the GR emblem there, which will cover that GR emblem, which is kind of interesting. This one is a bit smaller, but I don't really care. It's got little bumps for your license plate to rub on. As you can see, it's wide for the European style. But the main thing why I wanted this is supposedly the way that this is curved should help the wind go over your hood and help reduce the hood flutter that I've noticed around 65 miles an hour and faster. This is just basically going to clip in. You have your two areas for screws, you have the little clips on there, and that's all that you get included. As you can see here, you got the spacers, little safety thing, the two long screws, and a thing of primer. The reason for the primer is you have two adhesive strips near the top that you just stick up there. You got two of them, and then you have on the side over here as well, on just one of the sides, which is kind of interesting. It's going to be on, basically this portion actually covers up the GR logo, so I'm assuming this sticks directly to the logo over there to help it stick on. But let's get this installed here and see how this looks. First things first, keep in mind that these spacers, the bolt goes through this side. As you can see, the little arrow showing you where to go, and basically the reason for that is, I don't know if you can see it here, but once the bolt goes through, it stays in. So it inserts this way, and there's like a kind of like a, I'm sure you can hear that, like a ratcheting mechanism. The only way to get it out is to back it out. If you just simply pull on it, you'll damage those little tabs, and you're doing yourself a disservice at that point. So the bolts themselves are going to go through these holes. And the way it works is you're going to have your one bolt is going to end up going through that. But then the spacer goes on this side. It's a spacer, and it also holds the bolt in place, just like that. You get both of them installed the same way. It just goes like so, and it would push in. But the thing is, we don't have those holes. So let me show you what's going on. The way this installs is, yes, that's going to cover the GR logo like that, but it just clips in. Where is it? There's a spot. It clips in like this. You have the adhesive tape, and it just pushes in, and there's little clips. It's already holding it there. There's a clip here. Where is it? It's right here. That one goes in, and it grabs onto that, and then over here you can see where the hole is for the screw to go through, and because there's a gap, that's what the spacer's for. That way when you tighten the bolt down, it should be snug without moving. But the reality is that we don't have little clips back there, a little receiving end. We don't have the receiving end of where the license plate bolts go through, or the mounting bolts, excuse me. But as you can see here, I took the nose cone and just kind of placed it in here. You can see that the holes line up with those tabs there. So that must be the drill points if you want it to be absolutely perfect and precise with your work. That appears to be the two drill points. So that's what I'm going to use. Yep, giant mess, but I did it. Here it is. This is La Perfections, or close enough. Anyways, you just get some acrylic. I bought some super cheap acrylic. It's 2 millimeters, I believe, or 1/8 of an inch to be exact, like 2-point-something millimeters. Just mark it off. I have the back plate, and the reason for this plate is so these guys, these two, sorry, I didn't peel off the little film from these yet, but these guys are a tight fit, as you can see. Now that I removed the little plastic protective film from them. Excuse all this dirt, but anyways, those two go there. And the reason for this 1/8 of an inch is this is the exact thickness of this plastic. So here's the logic. This piece goes here, Obviously this other piece goes here, which makes this thickness of plastic the same. It's going to be uniform. Then you put a bunch of adhesive there, and then you glue, well, tape this little panel to it. So now it's doubly thick. Now it becomes 1/4 inch plastic, because keep in mind 1/8 plus 1/8 is 1/4 inch thick. Then you'll basically be having, sorry about that, at that point you'll have space to drill the holes right about here for your 2 US spec license plate mounting bolts. Be able to get the 2 holes there. It's basically one about here and one about here. And without doing all this, if you don't do the plate, if you don't do all of this and you have nothing to drill into, then it's just going to be, you know, in the air. But now since I have a panel here, I should be able to put the 2 holes in there, and then I'll have nuts on the inside, or potentially might modify this a little bit to put a captive nut in the correct spot. See how this doesn't move? Perfect. Let's get yourself one of these little Dremel kits. Not sponsored or anything, but these kits are awesome. It's got all kinds of bits and little blades and all kinds of cool stuff to do all this type of work. Look at this, it's perfect. It literally doesn't move. It's literally perfect. But yeah, the whole point of this is now we have a backing, we have the new blanks. I'm gonna get the double-sided 3M tape coming in tomorrow. I have a ton of the primer. I'm gonna clean all this off, degrease it all, glue all this into place, let all of it set. I will put new adhesive here, and then the strip goes over there. And this is gonna be ready to accept a license plate. So for this next part, you're gonna need something like this adhesion promoter primer. It looks like a liquid like that. We're gonna put it on 2 places. First thing, the acrylic, you can see the side is shiny, this side is not. So I've just scuffed this up with some sandpaper to give it a little bit of adherence, a little more areas for the adhesive tape to go into. So we're gonna cover the rough side of this with the adhesion promoter. We're also gonna cover the inside here with the adhesion promoter. There's no need to put any sandpaper or anything like that. You technically could if you wanted to, but this is fairly rough from the factory. You can hear that. So basically we're gonna cover this area and that acrylic piece with the adhesion promoter primer, and then we're gonna put tape on everything. Now that this portion is basically dry, you have 2 different types of tape. I have a thicker one, a thinner one. You can look around. The stuff that's normally black with the red film, that stuff is usually very, very thin. So I bought a couple different types just to see, and this one seems to be thicker than this, and it's definitely thicker than that red stuff. So I'm just gonna use this because it gives it a little bit of squish, and at the same time, if you have tolerance issues on that, it'll also allow for a little bit of take up because it's got a little bit of squish to it. So this is my choice. Now after you got all of your tape on, you can basically see I chose to put it on this because once I get everything on, I'll have adhesive exposed to it and I'll be able to put the tabs on and get all the holes and everything pre-drilled and ready to go. And once you get it on, go ahead and give it very firm pressure everywhere, get all of it stuck. Okay, so we have run into a major problem. I used a little Sharpie knife, I used a license plate, and I basically found the exact width. The plan was to use one of these captive nuts. Now the way this was going to work, or at least I thought, was I was going to have these tabs and a captive nut going through it, and then that way you have the nut portion of it on the inside. I would drill out that a little bit larger. This would be here, it would all be stuck to it. And then all the adhesive would be holding the 2 pieces together with the nut in place, and then I was going to put either rivets or something small through this too to keep everything together. And I was like, sweet, that's going to work. The problem is if you place the captive nut onto the plastic here, it is much too far inward. You can see where the nut will align versus where I need it to align. Now I was thinking potentially you could do it vertically like this. So you have the nut going like that, and then it would kind of align there, and you could twist it just a little bit to make it align to that spot. But I'm not sure yet. We're just basically going to see if I want to potentially drill the small hole exactly where that is, drill a tiny little pilot hole, and then cut out a hex shape and then stick a nut to the tape, potentially super glue it in place as well, and then that way this 1/8 inch acrylic will kind of hold it in place as you twist in the screw from the other side. And the reason why you can't just put in the screws here, because these 2 holes is where the aero cover mounts to the front grille. These two holes is where the aero cover will mount to the front grille. These two holes is where the aero cover mounts to the front grille. And you need to have your plate installed prior. And you need to have your plate installed prior onto those holes you see. It's just going to cover all of this. So you can't install the aero cover with the plate on. So this needs to go on first and then your plate needs to go on second. So that's the problem we're trying to solve. Let's see what works best. So here's the update. I've decided to actually just add these M6 nuts. I found a couple of nuts. Basically, we're going to be cutting it out to that exact shape there for this particular nut. The way I did it was I simply placed the nut upside down on a piece of paper. I traced it. I transferred that over here. I traced it exactly. I'm going to cut it out exactly like that. And what that will allow me to do is just drop the nut in there backwards. And then as I tighten from the other side, the nut itself will get pressed up into that because it's got a conical shape. Add a little bit of super glue here when I place the nut in, and then that will basically be permanent. And that'll allow me to take the plate on and off, and at the same time remove the aero cover on and off whenever I need to. Perfect. Now the hard part is going to be dremeling these tiny little holes and getting everything through. And if you're wondering what size hole you need for an M6 bolt, it's exactly a 1/4 inch, but start off something really small and work your way up from a 1/4 inch. I just put plastic here instead, that way all the shavings and stuff don't get stuck onto the adhesive. But that's it, let's get the Dremel out and get this done. Okay, so we have figured it out. You can see I taped the two little pieces inside. What I ended up doing is drilling the hex holes here, both of them. And then you trace that, I mean, you don't trace, you just kind of drill straight through, and you also make a hex shape on this side. I kind of screwed up over here a little bit. But you also do that same hex through this side. That way it's 1/8 plus 1/8, which is a 1/4 inch of acrylic, which is thicker than this. So when I drop this in, look how that fits. It's a press fit perfection. So it just presses in there. It's absolutely perfect. Now what we're gonna do before we simply press these in there, is I'm gonna put a little bit of super glue. The brand doesn't matter, but I'm gonna put a little bit of glue around this entire edge, and especially on this lip, because that lip will be touching the acrylic down there. So the whole point of this is we're gonna put a little bit of glue on these areas, press these in there, and make sure you don't have any glue inside the threads. And then basically I'm press fitting the nut into the hole, just like that. Actually, I can keep that in there and use it to press the entire nut down into the piece, and boom. I know it's not a riv nut, but check it out. It used up the entire amount of the first piece of acrylic, and as you can see, because we drilled carefully, this isn't cracked. So all of this is stuck, and now that will keep it from spinning. As you can see, I can easily thread a nut in and out of it, no problem. And then when I'm screwing the license plate in from the front, it's going to be pulling on it, which is going to seat this down even more. And honestly, you might as well, you could just do this and pull on it a bit, just to seat it the rest of the way. Keep in mind, with super glue, you have limited time to seat that as much as you can, and that looks pretty good to me. Do the second one, seat the second nut, and that's it. The two riv nuts, even though they're not riveted in here. My two M6 nuts are now captive. These are, I believe, zinc coated steel or stainless or whatnot. I don't think they're stainless. They're nuts. Who cares? Basically, that is what's going to hold the license plate on. Obviously, measure 100 times, cut once. I don't know if you can see that, but the holes, they line up perfectly. And that'll allow me to mount this onto the bumper with these holes. And it's mounted, and because I have captive nuts inside the aero cover itself, it'll then allow me to mount the plate. And then that is how we're going to get this mounted perfectly onto the vehicle. Even though it's got the JDM Japanese spec license plate mounts and all that, we've created our own mounting system for the US spec plate. Congratulations, if you're following along with me, you've created your own system here. I think that's enough to hold the license plate onto the vehicle itself. It's got plenty of reinforced plastic everywhere, which is thicker than this. So we have theoretically double the thickness of plastic that they use from the factory, although I believe this is a much higher quality plastic than this acrylic. This is a quality ABS made in Japan by Toyota. But basically we have a system that'll hold it. And to those of you with astute eyes With good vision, you've noticed that I still haven't put the adhesive back on here. If you have a brand new Aero cover, you're gonna have adhesive pieces here, here, and a strip down here. That is what's gonna be used to clip this onto the grill. And if you remember, on the grill, we put M6 captive nuts. I have the washers and everything else here from earlier. On the back of this, you'll notice little circular areas underneath where the rib nuts currently are. These actually are rivet nuts. As you can tell, they're riveted in. But there's little circles there. That's exactly where you want to drill your holes, and then that's exactly where you want to place the rivets. And then this way, it's going to be precisely with the height and the width of the grill. So it's going to have everything placed exactly where it needs to be. So make sure you drill those perfectly. So now that we finally got everything done, this is the last step. We got the grill here replaced. We got the nose cone, all of it's finished. We have the nuts there that we have captive using the acrylic. We have the new tape installed. Obviously, that's pretty simple. You just get the tape in there. You got the other piece as well for the GR emblem. Went ahead and primered the sections that are gonna have the adhesive touch in it. We have the nose cone here. Last portion is we're gonna be simply popping it in its proper place and getting everything secured for the last time. Because the 2 factory holes on the nose cone are required in order to get everything aligned properly, I'm going to carefully insert this here. Keep in mind that I have the adhesive exposed at this point. Now that we got those 2 aligned with the factory spacers they came with, I'm gonna go ahead and get these bolts started. Now that we got the bolts started, we got everything beginning to get into place. What we're gonna do is gently press this upward just a bit to the factory location. You're going to be looking in these areas on the factory PCB. You're going to be looking at the factory holes on the nose cone for alignment. I drill out mine just a tad because I was doing some experimentation earlier, so I have to push it up to get everything centered. But for you, you can simply look at it and center it with the hole. Now that I have it kind of in place just a bit, what I'm going to do is just double check the gaps. I'm also checking over here with the GR emblem to make sure that it is going to be covering it properly. And we are going to be pressing with the tape that we have in there for everything to adhere to the bumper here. And we're basically just making sure that all of this here is adhered properly. As you can see, the tape is holding it on and pulling back on it. And because we use the primer, the adhesion promoter, everything's actually on there properly the way that it should be. Now that we got all that on, one final look at the license plate. Basically, I have the 2 M6 nuts here with simple stainless washers and all that, and then we also have the just little screw covers. But we're also going to be using these 1/4 inch nylon spacers. They're very basic. You can buy them pretty much anywhere. And what that's going to do is it's going to give it a little bit of space away from the Aero cover to where the license plate frame isn't touching it directly. And that will keep all of this from getting marred, getting scratched up. And it also allows water to flow back there when you're cleaning, to just wash all the mud and dirt out, instead of, if you've ever had a car and you had the license plate on for 5-10 years, you pull the plate off, it's just covered, it's disgusting, and it starts rusting back there because the water has nowhere to go. But because we're doing it like this, the water will have an escape route and everything should be just fine. For the cherry on top, we got the 2 little black covers. They snap into place and we're done. And there you have it, everything's fully installed. If you followed me all the way through, happy you joined me on this journey. Hope you learned something today and have a nice day.